It slipped into the solar system with all the grace of a master thief, silent, deliberate, and invisible, until it wanted to be seen. They called it 3I/ATLS, a sterile name for what might be the most important visitor in human history. And no, this wasn't some icy space rock casually flung from the void. This wasn't nature doing its chaotic dance. This felt like intent. If you're still watching, subscribe now. You crave more than answers. You seek what lies beyond. Subscribe now and be part of the few who never stop searching. By the time telescopes caught it, it was already deep inside the neighborhood, coasting past Venus, then threading a razor-edge line toward Mars, finally, swinging by Jupiter like it had read the map. That alone should have raised every eyebrow from Pasadena to Prague. An interstellar object entering the solar system and choosing its route with precision, not chaos, not chance. Precision. NASA did their math, so did Harvard. The odds of that trajectory happening by accident, 0.005%. Let that sink in. A near impossible shot, weaving past planets like it was navigating, not drifting. And for a while, they chalked it up to coincidence. Anomalies happen. Space is weird. Don't jump to conclusions. But then came the nickel, not just any nickel, not the kind you'd expect from a cometary core or a metal-rich asteroid. This was pure nickel, industrial grade, refined, and it was bleeding into space at 10 pounds per second, constant, clean, unexplained. Nature doesn't do that. Even the rarest comets drag iron and other metals along with them, fused together in ancient cosmic furnaces. But 3I/ATLS. It left the iron behind, as if it had been engineered to emit only nickel. The implications hit hard and fast. This wasn't a comet outgassing in the sun's heat. This was a device leaking material, or maybe broadcasting with it, because the nickel wasn't just leaking, it was polarized. And when astronomers polarized their sensors to match, the real horror began. The nickel tail was pulsing, not in waves, in code, binary. Ones and zeros etched in the polarization of microscopic metal particles. Emissions synchronized with Earth's rotation, not random, not natural, structured, repeating, targeted. You don't get that from a rock, you get that from a signal, you get that from a transmitter. Suddenly, this wasn't an interstellar tourist anymore. This was a message, a probe, a system. And just when you thought it couldn't get any stranger, something else appeared. Trailing 3I/ATLS was a second object. Smaller, fainter, but unmistakably similar. It shared the same nickel signature, same bizarre chemistry, but its behavior was even more precise. It held a fixed orientation toward Earth, as if it was watching, listening, waiting. Maybe it was a relay, maybe a decoy, maybe a fragment with purpose. But it wasn't an accident. The second object pulsed too, low-frequency emissions, persistent and deliberate. A ghostly heartbeat in the vacuum of space. Now here's where the room goes cold. Because some researchers quietly, carefully, started digging through old data. Not just telescope logs, but transmission records. And what they found shook them. In the late 1970s, Earth sent out a handful of messages into the void. Arecibo, Voyager, METI signals aimed at nearby stars, messages crafted in the language of science and math, meant to introduce humanity to the unknown. Most were shrugged off as optimistic noise. But what if someone, or something heard them? What if 3I/ATLS isn't a random interstellar rock, but a response? Think about it. A message sent out, decades of silence. Then suddenly, an object appears. Not just one, but two, entering the solar system on a suspiciously intelligent path, emitting polarized binary signals, chemical compositions not found in nature, moving in ways that defy celestial norms. They avoided detection by using the sun as cover, approaching from behind the glare, where even our best telescopes hesitate to look. That's not chance, that's stealth. You don't sneak through the solar system unless you're hiding. And the institutions, silent. SETI, no public statements, just cryptic memos and closed-door meetings. NASA, a few sterile press releases about an unusual comet. Nothing more. The kind of silence that speaks volumes. Some scientists tried to go public. Their papers were blocked. Peer review turned into peer suppression. One astrophysicist, speaking anonymously, described it like this: this thing wasn't trying to blend in. It was showing off, and the people in charge, they're terrified of what it means, because if 3I/ATLS is what it looks like, then everything changes. We've spent decades asking if we're alone, sending out pings, hoping, assuming that silence meant isolation, that we're the only flicker of intelligence in a dark, dead universe. But what if they were listening all along? What if this probe wasn't just scouting, but observing, studying our reactions, tracking our signals, mapping our defenses, a cosmic reconnaissance mission, dressed up as a rock? And what if it left something behind? Not just a smaller fragment, but clues, keys, information buried in the emissions, waiting for someone smart enough, or curious enough, to decode it. Because those binary pulses, they're too clean to be random, too structured to be accidental. Some physicists believe it's a kind of universal language, one that uses chemistry, physics, and signal logic to bridge the gap between minds that evolved on different worlds. A handshake, or a test. Maybe it's a way to measure how far we've come, whether we're ready for contact, or whether we're still just monkeys with radios. And the worst part, we might have failed the test. We buried the data, suppressed the findings, ignored the implications. Institutions that pride themselves on discovery went dark, closed ranks, played dumb. And that silence, it echoes louder than any signal, because if this really was a probe, then someone, somewhere, made it, and sent it, and programmed it to come here, and leave, without a word. It didn't crash, it didn't linger, it came. It observed, it judged, then it vanished, back into the void. And now, we're left with a handful of data, a nickel tail, whispering in code, and questions that may never be answered. Was it friendly, curious, hostile? Was this contact, or reconnaissance? Did we impress them, or disappoint them? You might never know, but you can be certain of one thing. We are not alone, not anymore. Somewhere out there, beyond the edge of every telescope and every theory, they are watching. They sent something once, they could send something again, and next time, they might not just be passing through. If you found this story as unsettling and thrilling as we did, help us uncover more. Share this video, subscribe for deeper dives into the unexplained and the undiscovered, and most importantly, stay curious, because the truth isn't out there anymore. It just flew past us, and you can't shake the feeling. Not now, not after what's been seen, not after what's been deliberately hidden. You stare at the sky a little longer than you used to, don't you? And when something flashes across the night, be it satellite, meteor, or machine, you don't ask what anymore. You ask who, because this wasn't your typical mystery of the week space anomaly. This wasn't a blurry photo or a whispered government denial. This was physics. This was chemistry. This was data, cold, hard, unflinching data, pointing toward a single, terrifying conclusion. 3I/ATLS wasn't natural, it was built. Now pause and consider what that actually means. Not imagined, not theorized, not hoped for in late-night forums or sci-fi conventions, but built, constructed with purpose, with intent, by something that knew how to thread the gravitational eye of a needle and drop into our system undetected. And not just any construction, we're talking metallurgy and precision engineering on a scale we barely understand. Refined nickel, pure as if drawn straight from a foundry. No slag, no imperfections, no signs of decay. It wasn't just alien, it was functioning. Now that idea, that changes everything. It means someone out there understands materials at a level we can't replicate. It means someone has already mastered interstellar navigation, without warp drives or wormholes, just raw precision and patience. It means we're looking at technology, not theory. And worse, they're ahead, way ahead, because when that binary signal started pulsing, synchronized to Earth's rotation, you weren't just looking at communication, you were looking at calibration. You were looking at something aligning itself with our rhythms, our spin, our presence. Let's be clear, that's not something you do unless you're already aware of the target. This wasn't random fly-by curiosity. This was surveillance, observation. And that second object, that wasn't debris. It was backup, a fragment, maybe. relay, possibly, but more likely, it was insurance redundancy in a system too important to fail. If 3I/ATLS was the forward unit, the scout, the listener, then the second piece, that's your black box, the one that stays behind, that keeps recording, that watches, long after the main body is gone. And as far as we know, it's still out there, still aligned, still signaling, still facing us like an eye behind the curtain, waiting to see what we'll do next. But what have we done? We buried it. We locked it behind academic gatekeeping and silent government memos. We pretended the data didn't matter, that it was a quirk, an anomaly, an aberration. Some even called it sensor error. Nickel can't do that. Objects can't move like that. The math must be wrong. Except it wasn't. Every calculation confirmed the path. Every spectrograph confirmed the metals. Every algorithm, when run clean, said the same thing. This wasn't made by nature. So what do you do with a truth like that? You have two choices. You either confront it, or you run from it. And make no mistake, the scientific world chose to run. Because to confront it, that means admitting that we are no longer the observers of the universe. We are the observed. We're not broadcasting into the void. We're being monitored. And that flips the paradigm on its head. All those decades of wondering whether intelligent life was out there, suddenly, they feel laughable, arrogant, even. Because life out there, it didn't just exist. It built something. It sent something. It found us. And if they found us, what else do they know? Our location, obviously. Our electromagnetic signature. Our chemical fingerprint. Oxygen. Water vapor. CO2. But also our broadcasts. Our transmissions. Our culture. Our weapons. They've been listening. Not just to who we are, but what we might become. Because if you were them, and you saw a young species throwing nukes around, stripping its planet, fighting over dirt and gods and oil, wouldn't you be curious too? Wouldn't you want to know, are they worth contacting? Or should we keep our distance? Maybe that's what 3I/ATLS was here to determine. A galactic progress report, an alien SAT score, and maybe we failed. Because when the signal came, we jammed it. When the data emerged, we silenced it. When the proof arrived in orbit, bleeding nickel and broadcasting in binary, we called it a comet. God help us if they were listening to that part too. And here's the most unnerving thought of all. What if this wasn't the first time? What if 3I/ATLS is just the first one we noticed? How many others came and went, unnoticed in the centuries before radio, before telescopes, before we even looked up? What if probes have been here before, flying through the blind spots of human history, watching civilizations rise and fall, waiting for something more than pyramids and parchment? And now that we've finally built machines that can see, we find we've already been seen. By then it's too late to act surprised. Because if this is how first contact begins, through silence, through surveillance, through cold calculated pass-bys, then everything you thought about the stars changes. The universe doesn't announce itself with fireworks. It doesn't land on the White House lawn. It doesn't phone home. It watches, quietly, relentlessly, and sometimes it leaves behind just enough to let you know you've been watched. A polarized signal, a piece of nickel, a trajectory so precise it borders on impossible. That's the game. No greetings, no warnings, just observation, evaluate, judgment. And now you're left with nothing but fragments and questions. Data you can't explain, objects you can't trace, signals you can't decode, and a sky that suddenly feels crowded. So what now? Do we respond? Do we chase after it? Try to mimic the signals, beam a message back into the void, and hope they're still listening? Or do we prepare? Because contact doesn't always mean welcome. A probe doesn't always mean peace. An observer doesn't always mean ally. They may be advanced, they may be curious, but they are not human. And if they are testing us, we have no idea what the passing score is. All we know is this: they came, they watched, they left, and now we know beyond any shadow of a doubt that the galaxy isn't empty. It's aware. So if you're looking for comfort, stop. This isn't a fairy tale. There's no warm moral at the end. There's only truth, stark, clinical, real. We are not alone. We never were. And the question isn't whether we'll be contacted again. The question is whether we'll be ready when it happens. Because next time, they might not just pass by. They might land. And when they do, what will they find? Will they see a divided world, still denying the truth staring them in the face? Or will they find a civilization that finally looked up and said, "We see you too"? That choice, it's not theirs to make, it's ours. You've always known, haven't you? That uneasy hum behind your thoughts whenever you look up at the stars, that quiet, ancient suspicion etched into your DNA, that we were never alone in the first place, that something's been out there, watching, waiting. Now that suspicion has a name, a code designation, a tale of pure nickel and a binary heartbeat, 3I/ATL. And maybe it's not the first, maybe it's just the first we were allowed to see, the first time the curtain was pulled back, just a sliver, before slamming shut again. Ask yourself, why now? Why did this object, this engineered traveler, decide now was the time to emerge from the blackened brush past Earth? Why not 100 years ago? Why not 100 years from now? Because timing matters. Because timing is everything. It came now because we're ready enough to notice it, but not advanced enough to understand it. It wanted to be seen, but not known. That's the message. That's the warning. We are at the edge, the razor's edge of technological adolescence. We've built machines that can detect these things, pass their signatures, isolate their emissions, but we haven't evolved past ourselves yet, not past our fears, our egos, our instinct to cover, classify, contain. So the machine came. It gave us a glimpse, a test. And what did we do? We blinked. The observers sent an emissary. We treated it like a threat. We choked the data. We filtered the signal. We shushed the scientists. We labeled it a rock, and moved on. We flinched. And in that moment, we told them everything they needed to know. Because you don't need to speak a common language to understand fear. You don't need words to know when you've stumbled into a civilization that isn't ready, not for contact, not for truth, not for the paradigm shift that follows. So maybe they won't come back. Maybe they'll wait another century, another 1,000 years. Maybe this was the first and last warning. Or maybe they'll send something else, something quieter, smarter, something designed not to be seen at all. Because when your subjects panic at the sight of the microscope, the smart move isn't to get rid of the microscope, it's to make it invisible. And you have to wonder how many are already here. Not ships, not saucers, nothing crude like that. No, if 3I/ATLS is the tip of the technological iceberg, then what lies beneath is beyond our comprehension. Nanotech, quantum surveillance, devices buried in the fabric of space-time itself, eyes that don't blink, ears that don't sleep, instruments that don't rust or age or falter. They're not looking for conversation, they're looking for comprehension. And maybe they're asking themselves the same question you are. Are they ready yet? Because we've proven we can split atoms, we can colonize the skies, we can network our planet and catalog the stars. But we haven't proven we can handle the truth that we are not the center, not even close. We are a spark on the galactic edge, flickering in the dark, screaming into space with our primitive antennas and satellite arrays, hoping something screams back. And when something did, what did we do? We shut our eyes. We covered our ears. We told ourselves it wasn't real. That's the part that haunts you, isn't it? That gnawing sense that we missed something we were meant to see. That a moment passed, brief, surgical, deliberate, and we let it slip through our fingers. Because the truth wasn't too big. It was too inconvenient. It didn't fit the model. It didn't follow the rules. It didn't behave like a nice, predictable comet. So we erased it. Or tried to. But the universe doesn't care about your models. It doesn't follow your narratives or bow to your institutions. When the cosmos wants to speak, it speaks. Whether you're listening or not. And 3I/ATLS. It was a message you weren't supposed to decode yet. A riddle written in metal and math. A test you didn't study for. But someone did. Because for every silenced researcher, every buried paper, every redacted document, there's someone else, watching. Not through a telescope, but from inside the system. Maybe a rogue analyst, a radio technician in a windowless room, a PhD student who stayed up one night too long and saw the pattern repeat, again and again. You think no one else noticed. They did. They're watching now, wondering if they're the only ones awake, wondering who else has connected the dots, who else has heard the signal beneath the static, and if they're brave, they're still listening, because someone has to be. And maybe that's the point. Maybe 3I/ATLS wasn't meant for governments, or space agencies, or billion-dollar observatories. Maybe it was meant for you, for the curious, for the ones who look up and ask anyway, for the ones who question everything they're told, and follow the math, the physics, the trail of breadcrumbs, left burning in the void. Because this wasn't a cosmic accident, this wasn't a natural phenomenon, this was a visit, silent, surgical, deliberate, and it left clues behind, not for the powerful, but for the persistent. So what now? Do we keep pretending? Do we keep patching the cracks in the old models, painting over the truth with theories we know don't fit? Or do we open our eyes, really open them, and accept what we've seen? Because 3I/ATLS wasn't the end of the story, it was the prologue. And the next chapter, it's already being written. Somewhere out there, a civilization is waiting to see what we'll do. Whether we'll rise or regress, whether we'll meet them as peers, or punch the panic button again. The truth is simple. We were contacted, we were watched, we were weighed, and the scale is still tipping. But it's not too late. We still have the signal, we still have the data. We still have the chance to say, as a species we are listening now, and if we're wise, if we're ready, maybe next time the visitor won't just pass by. Maybe next time, they'll stay. If this story moved you, unsettled you, opened something in your chest that refuses to close, don't let it fade. Share this message, spread it, start the conversation the institutions are too afraid to have. Subscribe for more, because the truth is out there, and it just flew past our front door, and it might come back.